Hi, I'm Henry Weixler, and in this video, I'll be discussing my Q4 visual thinking project. Throughout the year, we've read several pieces of literature, but I've selected two core texts, one supplemental text, and one modern-day example that specifically address the driving question, what is the impact of a single moment on a life, and how do our choices reveal our character? The examples that best support the question are core texts Macbeth by William Shakespeare and 102 Minutes by Dwyer and Flynn, as well as the supplementary text Hansel and Gretel by the brothers Grimm, and a modern-day example of newspaper articles reporting on a Noblesville school shooting. First, we'll look at the play Macbeth, the tragedy written by William Shakespeare, which was first performed in 1606, is set in Scotland and follows the character Macbeth and the result that ambition plays in his life. The play sets the stage for plot that effectively explains the impact a single moment has on a life, as well as how our choices reveal our character. Early in the story, Macbeth encounters three weird sisters that prophesied his fate when they announced, "All hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Cawdor, all hail Macbeth, that shalt be king hereafter." This initial statement by them was the single moment in Macbeth's life that acted as the catalyst which created a different Macbeth than portrayed prior to the event. Later, after we learn of his plans to kill King Duncan and take what will inevitably be his, the reader is alerted that he has followed through with his plans when he declares to his wife, Lady Macbeth, "I have done the deed." The dialogue states that he has done the deed of murdering the king. This explains that because he was told his fate, he has unveiled his true, corrupt character that will do anything for power, and that the prophecy empowered him in his choice to kill the king. Lastly, we see the impact of the single moment on his actions and mindset when the stage direction clarifies the fighting between Macbeth and Macduff. In Act 5, between lines 34 and 35, it's written that they re-enter fighting and Macbeth slain. The text describes the impact that the single moment had on his life and actions, resulting in his early death. Next, the non-fiction book 102 Minutes by Dwyer and Flynn illustrates in vivid detail what those directly involved in the attack on 9/11 heard, saw, and how they acted according to countless number of resources. One pair that is acknowledged in the book are best friends Ed Beyea and Abe Zelmanowitz. Their incorruptible bond between the two clearly answers the important question, how does a single moment affect a life, and the choices we make depict our character? In the attack, the elevators are damaged, making it nearly impossible for Ed, the heavyset quadriplegic, to descend the 26 floors to safety. When Abe recognized this, he decided to stay with Ed, telling people who questioned his decision, "I'll stay with Ed." This action shows the devotion to each other and the decision by Abe to not leave Ed. The character of Abe is exposed when he, even after temptation and advice from others to leave, remained next to Ed. This is made clear in the exchange. Zelmanowitz could have left much earlier. And, "Why don't you go?" the fireman asked. "No, I'm staying with my friend," he replied. The fact that he did not give in to warnings and chose to be with Ed and not consumed by his own wants proves the kind-hearted, selfless character of Abe. Sadly, the book informs the reader that Abe Zelmanowitz had died while standing by his wheelchair-bound friend Ed Beyea on the 27th floor of the North Tower. The consequence of Zelmanowitz's actions was one that he knew was likely if he stayed, but his actions did have a positive result. Abe was able to provide comfort and peace of mind for Beyea, which is the benefit of his actions. And while both men perished, he was able to demonstrate his devotion to the friendship as he did what many others might not have, risking your own life for someone else's. The supplemental text is fairy tale Hansel and Gretel, which tells about a poor family in which the parents decide to avoid starvation, they must abandon their son and daughter in the woods. Although because of their cleverness, they escape and survive. The text provides a clear example of how a single moment can affect a life and how our choices depict our character. In the beginning of the story, the two kids hear the mother devising a plan to abandon them in the woods. The mother discloses to the father, "We cannot even feed our own children. There is nothing left for ourselves." "I will tell you what, husband," answered the wife. "We will take the children early in the morning into the forest, where it is thickest. We will make them a fire, and we will give each of them a piece of bread. Then we will go to our work and leave them alone. They will never find the way home again, and we shall be quit of them." Here, the mother's harsh comments are the single moments that help introduce the plot and provide reasoning for why the kids do what they do. Overhearing the mother's plans provokes the action from the son, which in the story is stated, "And when the full moon got up, Hansel took his little sister by the hand, and followed the way where the flint stones shone like silver, and showed them the road. They walked on the whole night through, and at the break of day they came to their father's house." The excerpt provides an example of how, when faced with adversity, his calm, resourceful, and compassionate character traits shine through because of his clever solutions and sympathy towards his distraught sister. As the outcome of the event unfolds, we find that Hansel and Gretel do make it home safely in the text, till at last they saw in the distance their father's house. Then they ran till they came up to it, rushed in at the door. Then was all care at an end, and they lived in great joy together. This illustrates the impact that the single moment and actions have on a life. Because of the mother's actions, she was nowhere to be found, and due to Hansel's, the kids lived happily ever after. A modern-day example of how a single moment affects a life and how our actions reveal character is in the event and people involved in the school shooting at Noblesville West Middle School. One of the most important and impactful moments was what the teacher did in reaction to the shooter's threat. In an article posted by Indy Star, the single moment can be identified when Seaman said he double-pumped a basketball that he held in his left hand before throwing it in the shooter's direction. He said he threw the ball as hard as he could, then tackled the student to a far wall of the classroom in a bear hug. The single moment is when the student walked in with a gun and then disarmed by the teacher, as explained above. The choice and actions of Seaman demonstrate his character and are expanded on in a New York Press article when it states, "Our science teacher immediately ran at him, swatted a gun out of his hand, and tackled him to the ground," Stonebreaker said. While the text is similar to that of the previous, a key point to note is that Stonebreaker describes Seaman's action to act as immediate. This conveys that he did not hesitate or flee, but rather charged towards the shooter as soon as he realized what was happening. The traits of selflessness and courageousness are seen in Seaman's actions as a result of his determination to do what was needed without being affected by the harm inflicted by the shooter. Stonebreaker also helps the reader to understand the importance of Seaman's actions and decisions by commenting, "If it weren't for him, more of us would have been injured." Stonebreaker recognizes the potential for much greater harm to have occurred had the teacher not acted the way he did, courageously, without hesitation. To summarize, the analyzation of core texts Macbeth in 102 minutes, the supplemental text Hansel and Gretel, and the modern-day example of the Noblesville school shooting provide ample evidence that supports the answer to our driving question. This is that, whether the actions be good or bad, the choices made in the few single moments in our life not only reflect our character as we respond to situations, but also deeply affect the rest of our lives.